So that it is correct.
Just so they can hear.
Yeah.
Because I'm hopeful that all that.
Right. 16 years. Right. Yeah.
Morning.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming. And let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I will note that all board members are present this morning, and I'll take a motion to approve the minutes. Second, and if there is I'll second that. And are there any questions or comments? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
And I'll move to acknowledge the Secretary of State Directive 2023-03, which summarizes Substitute House Bill 458. If there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any question or comments? I know Mr. James has done a detailed summary of it. We've all read through it. It's kind of a guideline for our going forward, how to conduct elections.
Yeah, I do have a question. I noticed in the directive there was, a section about public outreach and campaign and on the changes which are significant for us. And I'm just wondering, and for voters and for how we process shortened time periods and so forth. And I'm wondering, I know the director said their Secretary of State's office would be issuing digital images and information for us to post, but will we have information that we can post? And what other public outreach will we be having to make sure voters are aware of this is a significant change, and want to make sure that voters are aware. What do we have a plan yet about what we're doing? Are we going to wait for the Secretary of State or to give us the digital pieces, or what are we doing on that?
So we are putting a plan together. We are not going to wait in the Secretary of State's office. We've already have drafted like an FAQ on the new law that will get up on our website, and then we're going to try to put together a whole kind of like library tour going and having some public thing to get to come and ask questions of our staff, and then work with like the political parties to make sure everyone's doing the same thing, as well as talking with some of the bigger advocacy groups like NOVA, and making sure that we're all saying the same thing, like all voting is local, making sure that there's no contradictions in interpretation of what's going on. So we've started to have some of those conversations. Now that we have the directive, we will start pushing that out, because it'll be in play for me.
Yeah, and if each of the party leadership votes, or the parties can have that information, and they can also disseminate to the voters. But something will be on our website as well. Then.
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. And I will move to acknowledge the municipal ward boundaries and corresponding precinct boundaries for Palmer Heights and Solon. If there's a second.
Second.
Okay, any question or comment?
Just I guess, when will for the affected voters, when will they get notice of the precinct changes? How are we going to handle that to make sure voters are aware? So we don't get them voting in the wrong precincts.
Right. So what we will do is we actually will start getting letters prepared now to push out. What we wanted to do was we wanted to have this filing deadline come to actually see who was in the election. And so we can send out a letter that says, for them coming, for example, May election, this is your polling place. If it has changed, if not, it's still the polling place, and then you've had this municipal change. So we can have that targeted for that. Individuals who are not in the May election, we won't speak to that election. We'll say that this has changed. In both letters, we're going to point to the municipalities changing the ward boundaries, which then causes us to change the precinct boundaries. So it's not that we just, hey, this sounds like a great idea, let's do it. There's a reason, a method for the madness of what we're doing. So we will start to get those out now that we have had February 1st valid deadline. We still have March, but we kind of, from what we can anticipate, like for example, Berea's, they're a March deadline, but they're already in this election because they have municipal contests. So it's kind of nice to know that. So we can start to take that out. We should probably, I would say next week, have letters start going out.
Okay, great.
And then we will also still do our voter guide, which will be separate. And then we'll hit a little bit on that also, those guides.
Great. Thank you.
Remind you, I know Joe lives in Solon, so get it right.
No pressure.
I vote by mail, so. No,
Thank you.
no, we need to know. I mean, everybody wants.
If there are no other questions, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously. And on to the approval of vouchers. I will move to approve the vouchers as set forth in, well, we have set forth in the agenda. First, we have a voucher for Tenex Solutions, the annual maintenance and license agreement. That's correct, Mr. Pilati?
Yes, that is for the 10X University software that we utilize, and that is the software package for online poll worker training. It is where we put our videos, where poll workers log in and they get that training piece. So that's what we have a couple of 10X products. This is actually for the university. So we've been using this since 2020. And it's a good program.
Terrific. And then the next one is our annual postage, deposit to the U.S. Postal Office.
Yes, so that's something that's just routine, and typically a couple times a year, we'll put money on the meters. We'll have money on there for the primary election. We'll come back again, probably have money again put on in the fall for the general election. These are dollars that are budgeted for with our throughout our main budget.
Terrific. And I see the last one is a parking space license agreement. You want to just kind of give us a summary of the need for that?
Sure. I'm actually Tony's.
Yeah, so, you know, with, we have the Madison parking lot, which has 30 spaces over there. As we've seen with increased number of people coming down here to vote early in person, the best thing is for us to lock in that parking lot. We actually did that last year. What we found, what staff found was like in 2020, we were actually paying $176 up to $116 per parking spot. And so in 2020, we paid $21,000 for the total, but we only had it for 6 months out of the year. So this way, by negotiating for the full year price, we're actually able to get a lower price and be able to use it throughout the year, which would be really good, which will be very good, not only for voters coming down here, but as we have our temporary workers could use that parking lot. Also, as we have training throughout the summer with the voting equipment, and they come here to this building to train, we'll have additional parking for it. So it's a wise move.
Out of an abundance of caution, I'm going to abstain from voting on this. Robert Madison is a friend, longtime client of my firm and of me and my client, my firm. So I won't be voting. I'll abstain from the vote.
Understood. So it does provide for a 30-day termination?
Yes, yes. So if for some reason we were to move from this bill or whatever, for whatever reason, if we wanted to terminate the contract, we have only have to give 30 days notice.
And I see the daily rate for this year be $55 a space, or a monthly rate of $55 and $60 next year, which is probably within the market. Right. Thank you. And it, of course, it carries an unbiased business conduct section. It's always been champion. You want to do so.
Yeah, love that provision for everybody.
All right. Any other question or comment? Okay. Hearing none. All those in favor of the vouchers as set forth in our agendas. Aye.
Aye. With my extension on the Madison parking agreement license agreement.
Yes, and we'll note that in the minutes. Thank you. And now I'll move to approve the to outsource the printing and mailing of vote by mail ballots for the May 2nd, 2022 primary election. We're required to do that through Secretary of State rules and regulations, I understand.
Yes. So that is right per the election official manual. We do this, and then if we obtain approval today, then we are able to submit an application to the Secretary of State's office. We can't submit that application until this happens. We've been doing this ever since the state has required it, and they have always approved our application.
Okay, any other question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion passes unanimously, and I'll move to acknowledge.
Chairman?
Yes,
Just real quick, if I can, I have one other item I wanted to, before we get into the candidate petition services piece. It's a walk-on item, and it's very important. And it is the, your colleagues would like to make some comments regarding your tenure here in Cuyahoga County.
Okay, I guess that'll be my
you're
cue.
gonna do that now?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Very good. Yeah. All right, thanks to board members McCaffrey and Stickham, Director Pallotti, and Deputy Director Caliber for allowing me the small and personal privilege to give some brief remarks about our retiring friend and colleague Jeff Hastings, especially since Jeff and I are the longest serving board members, 16 years. So Jeff, it's hard to believe that it's been 16 years since we were appointed to the Board of Elections in 2007 by former Secretary of State and now Ohio Supreme Court Justice Jennifer Bruner. Time sure flies when you're having fun. But seriously, I want to thank you for all of your hard work, your time and talent that you've given over these years to our agency, and ultimately to and for the benefit of all voters of Cuyahoga County. Although we have had a few differences of opinion over the years, not many for 16 years, but some, you were and have been professional and collegial and always singularly focused on what ultimately was best for our agency and the voters that we serve. Free, fair, and transparent elections was always the mantra and the goal to support our administrative leadership and amazing staff in achieving success in administering our many elections. You've been through 4 presidential election cycles, including about another 70 elections statewide and local over these 16 years. We've been sued. We've entertained challenges, protests, held quasi-judicial hearings, and responded to numerous election law changes. In each instance of the work that was done, you displayed intensity, but calm. I must say, we will really miss your efficient but thorough chairing of our board meetings and of the quasi-judicial hearings conducted by the board. As chair of our meetings, you were always quick to accommodate comments and queries from your board colleagues while ensuring that we were respectful of the time spent on each matter at hand. We will miss your emails along with our clerks containing your edits of our meeting minutes. And I know that Terry may have to find another buddy to work on election day down on the dock at the warehouse, where our chair would roll up his sleeves and be down there with the guys hauling boxes and doing all manner of activity to get the voting stuff, the discs and everything back in, the bags and all of that. So I must say your honed skills as a judge allowed for our hearings to be thorough and for each interested party appearing before our board, voter, candidate, and concerned citizen to be heard and have due process, whatever the claim or issue being adjudicated. Jeff, you're a person of great integrity, and we, along with all of the voters of Cuyahoga County, have benefited by your tenure on the board. You will be missed, but accept our best wishes for a happy and well-deserved retirement.
No,
Right.
thank you. Thank you, Terry. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
There we go.
Now,
Oh, you're not done.
I would wait. I would have saved this for the end of the.
We got folks, voters here,
Yeah,
concerned citizens here, and we want them to see.
we have some more.
Yeah, we have more.
Oh.
Have a seat.
I should give him that direction, have a seat.
This is a resolution from the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections in gratitude to Jeff Hastings for his public service. whereas Chairman Hastings has served the Board of Elections and the voters of Cuyahoga County with passion, honor, and integrity. And whereas Chairman Hastings has successfully led the Board of Elections as chairman twice and served as a member of the board for over 15 years. His wisdom and experience has helped the agency to evolve into a model of excellence in election administration in Ohio with a consistent track record of accurate and transparent elections. And whereas Chairman Hastings has worked with his fellow board members to make many tough decisions based on the rule of law and fairness, his conduct that has helped the Board of Elections become well respected by our peers, elected officials, and voters. And whereas the Board of Elections has benefited from Chairman Hastings' leadership and his ability to adapt to new voting systems, the introduction of electronic poll books, the innovative procedures as the Board of Election has been through many changes over the years. We will never forget his dedication and how he's worked collecting curbside ballots and alongside of us on the loading docks, on loading bands on election nights. And whereas we wish him the best in life as he travels new pathways generously, sharing his warm personality, abilities, skills, and others. And it be therefore resolved that we, the board members, director, deputy director of the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections, join together with staff in proclaiming our deep gratitude for Chairman Hastings' service and hard work.
Thank you.
Well, I have the honor of presenting you with a crystal gavel.
Oh.
Colleagues here, 2007 to 2023.
Thank you so much.
You know, from judge to head of our board here, you wielded this gavel with such integrity. And it's just been an honor to serve with you. I know I speak for our colleagues and I echo what Ina Joe's earlier comments. Your integrity here at the board and doing a great job day to day, how you've treated the public. We're going to miss you, but we know we'll stay in touch with you. And we appreciate you.
No,
Thank you.
absolutely. I
Job well
appreciate
done.
that. Thank you. Yes. And I know Rachel has something too.
I just want to lift it up to Mary. Yes, I hope you can hear me in the back, because it's hard to hear back there. I have a commendation from the secretary, and he wanted to let you know that he very much appreciates your tenure in the board. Your hard work does not go unnoticed, and it is very much appreciated. And I just like to say that I have witnessed Jeff's leadership here many times during his tenure. In 2020, I was at the North Royalton polling location, and it was a 2-hour wait. And I texted Jeff, and instead of passing the buck and saying somebody should do something, he grabbed an e-poll book and headed out and checked in voters for the rest of the day. And that is something that is rather extraordinary. And I've witnessed him being on the loading docks in election night, and it's very much appreciated. You can tell when you can define a leader by someone who pulls up their sleeves and does the grunt work, and you've done that, and we've noticed it. And thank you very much for your leadership.
Thank
Very
you. I
nice.
appreciate it.
Oh, I think we're gonna be.
Should we get one joint picture?
Yeah.
No.
Oh.
Thanks.
That's nice.
All right, crew, let's get up here and take a picture, okay?
Okay.
Tony and Tony's. Thank you, Robin.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for all your kind words. It's been an honor and privilege to serve with these board members, especially Anna Joe for 16 years. In those 16 years, it's either myself or herself have been chairpersons of this organization. And I've really appreciated the opportunity to work with you. And you too, Terry, I know you're new here, but I know we're going to, going forward, this organization will be blessed with your leadership. And of course, you, Lisa, for the last 2 years. And the Tonys, and y'all, Steve and Mark up here. I think we probably got the coolest desk in the entire state of Ohio when it comes to Board of Elections, and you, the staff too. Mary, Skip, and Robin, and all you. I mean, there's so many you can name, the managers. It's been a wonderful, wonderful ride. But we still got some business to get through today, so we're going to continue to move on. Thank you. I will acknowledge, I think I was making a motion and I was interrupted. That's all right. A motion to acknowledge the intent to retire and resignations from an appointment to elected office That be Mayor DeGeeter out in the Parma, intent to retire, resignations from office of Vito DePiro and Amanda Carpus, Parma City Council and Parma City School respectively. And then the appointment to elected office is Stephen Coyle and Brooklyn City Council, Mark Madden, North Olmsted City Council, Vito DePiro, Parma City Council as president, Angela Schwartz, Parma City School Board of Education, and Michael Morrow, Seven Hills City Council. There's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And on to certifications. Mr. Lawler, you want to tee that up for us?
Can we do the candidates and issues?
I'm sorry. Acknowledgement of candidate issues withdrawals. Thank you, Anjo. I will move to acknowledge the withdrawals of candidates and issues as set forth in the agenda. That candidate withdraw on the May 2nd, 2023 primary election in Fairview Park Council Ward 3. Daniel Zicka and Oakwood Mayor Brandon Agnew. Issue withdrawals of a local liquor options in Euclid, Ward 8, and Warrensville Heights, Ward 7, as well as a candidate withdrawal from the November 7th, 2023 general election, Middleburg Heights Council, Ward 4. There's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Hi, Mr. Lawler.
Good morning, John Muller, Manager, Candidate Judicial Services. We have one candidate that is insufficient for her signatures. That's Nicole Good, Oakwood Village Council at Large. She needed 50, she only has 46, and she was short by 4. We did notify her to come to that, not when she was here. And we asked the board not to certify it.
Okay. And I'm sorry, what was her name again, Brenda?
Nicole Good.
Ms. Good, are you here today, audience? And she's been notified by your staff?
Yes,
Right.
I talked to her in email.
She's not on the list, is she?
No.
Okay, we removed her from the list. Am I in the
She's
wrong
not
one?
on- She's not on the certification.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Right, you just
Oh, yeah,
want
yeah, yeah.
the board's acknowledgement of approval to not certify her because of insufficient signatures. And she's not here to speak on that matter. She's been given an opportunity. Okay. All right, I will move not to certify Ms. Good's petitions for lack of signatures. If there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any question or comment? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
We have 3 local options. If the board recalls, in August of last year, we had Broadview Brewing Company that failed to put an applicant for a D6 on their petition. They only had holder up. And at that time, the board made the ruling that going forward, the petitions should have not only all the permits that they're holders of, but also what they're an applicant for. So using that methodology for this election, we ended up with 3 petitions. All they did is put down, say, applicant 13-6. These are professional, these 3 happen to be professional local option petitioners. We had a discussion with Assistant Prosecutor Winston about this, and he talked to Secretary of State. We marked what a very eloquent legal opinion. I guess none of us really are versed in local options, so I think we've all learned quite a bit in the last 3 weeks. I believe his legal opinion states that the board should accept them. And we're good with that. That gives us good direction going forward. This is the D6 is an applicant for Sunday sales. And I think the understanding is they don't need to put that on. They don't need to put that what they're holders of because they're really only applying for the D6 for Sunday. The other permits are all for the weekends.
Yeah, but what happens, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
I thought we made a different ruling in the other case.
Your ruling
Because-
was that
Yeah,
your ruling was
they needed to list all of
All.
everything,
yes.
which doesn't
Mark,
really
probably.
make sense after, so I'm glad, I feel badly because
Well-
it doesn't seem like, we had a different opinion and a different reading of the language, and it's not our language, it is the liquor permit folks. And I thought back then we had checked with them, and they in fact said that each permit applied for and held, even though the language says or, that the applicant had to list them all. And I thought that was the basis for why we ruled the way we did before. It doesn't really make sense. It should be either or, and it doesn't make sense, which those other folks made that argument. Why would we have to list something other than what we are actually applying for? So I just want to make sure we're consistent. Yeah.
Could I
Yes,
Yeah.
Please.
I think we are staying consistent. And that application from Broadview still would have been denied under this reasoning. They only listed the permits that they held. They did not list that they were applicants for the D6.
Oh, so it was the opposite.
Yes.
Yeah, clearly you have to list what you're applying for.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. And they retroactively applied for it after circulating the petition. So there were some issues
Oh,
with
that's okay.
what they were.
Oh, why we denied it last time.
And
Correct.
you have provided the board with some guidance, Mark, correct?
That-
And you specifically addressed was, Ina Joe's just brought up, that there is a distinction between our conduct in August of last year and what staff's recommending now.
Right, but I think when we were working on the Broadview Heights, I had the wrong impression that you had to list all the permits in addition to your application for the D6. But that still would not undermine the rejection of that petition in that case. So I think we were wrong, but we got it right.
Okay, so we have some guidance and the recommendation of staff. I know Mr. McTeague is on the line here. Do you want to comment at all, sir?
No, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, no, I don't have anything to add. Yeah, I had some conversations earlier with Mr. Lawler and Mr. Musson, so I'm good.
All right, thank you. So we have certifications of candidates right now, no, excuse me, certification of candidates for the May 2nd, 2023 primary election is set forth in our agenda. I will move to approve that certification. If there's a second, thank you. Any question or comment? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And then I will move to certify the issues, which of course will include these three local option issues.
Yeah, they are not on your list.
Right.
We will give an amended list to Mary for the.
Okay, so I will move to approve the issues set forth in our agenda in addition to local, and add to that local options in Parma Ward 9 Precinct D, South Euclid Ward 4 Precinct A. Right, what was the fourth?
North Wilton 3, Precinct 3.
Okay, and add that to these lists of to be certified issues. If there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any question or comment? All right, hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Motion passes. And now on to certification. I will move to certify the candidates nominated without a primary election to the November 7th, 2023 general election ballot as set forth in our agenda. If there's a second.
Second.
Is there anything you want to add to that? Okay, thank you. No other questions? Hearing none, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. I will, we have left then, I believe, this matter of East Cleveland, correct? That's the next matter. And I know many of you were here in that regard, regarding this matter. And it is a discussion to schedule, whether to schedule a recall elections for East Cleveland council members, Bloshiak, Gowdy, and Stevenson. I just want to kind of set this up where we're at. We received materials from Willa Hemmons, who is represented to our staff that she's now clerk of council at East Cleveland. And therefore, and that they've certified that there's sufficient signatures for the recall of these three individuals that I talked about. And that therefore asking this board to schedule a date to place these recall on the ballot. And so that's, what we're going to discuss here. I know we've asked, Ms. Hemmons has provided reasoning and rationale how she came about to be the clerk. I think it's been publicly circulated. Her rationale and reasoning is that she had, I believe, Mr. Martin, a member of council, appoint her because the other members, the council clerk had been fired ostensibly by the president of council. No clerk had been appointed. Therefore, Ms. Hemmons' logic in her letter, and I want to get this right, Mr. Musson, if I understand, is that because the three individuals who were the subject of the recall, she's determined they can't vote for a clerk. Therefore, there was only one person left. That was Mr. Martin. Mr. Martin had the authority to appoint her. She is therefore appointed, and therefore she is just bringing these down as required to as a clerk, and therefore we need to put on the ballot. I think I've asked you, Mr. Musson, to look into this matter because I'm not so certain the logic that Ms. Hemmons has shared with me in us, this board stance as regards to her position as a clerk of council. I know there are people that want to talk about this here, and we're going to hear from you too. But let's first hear from, Ms. Hemmons is here, and I know she put in, and there's others that, why don't you come speak to it? We'll get to you, Mr. Musson, in a minute, okay?
Good morning, council. How are you?
Good morning, Ms. Hemmings. Could you speak to the matter of how you've determined that you are now the clerk of council in this case?
I think that's somewhat a misunderstanding. What I submitted to the board for its consideration was a case called the Thompson case that you have before you that said that the clerk does the ministerial duties. I also submitted to you legal opinions from 2021 and 2023, which showed a pattern of disenfranchising the clerk of council anytime there was a possibility of a recall, particularly that was targeting the council president. So therefore, in light of the Thompson case, and indeed the more recent case of Stevenson versus the council president, in which it too corroborates and sets a precedent that the clerk of council position is merely ministerial. And I also included an East Cleveland Municipal Code. I think there's also corollary state law that indicates that the spirit and intent in order to effectuate the purpose is what is important. And if someone continuously perverts that intent or spirit, then one is allowed, a board, an agency, the public is allowed to seek remedies in order to preclude that perversion to take effect. And that's what is done, not that I'm the clerk of council. Indeed, there is no clerk of council. I know this isn't a matter of your concern, but no legitimate legislation has been passed since January 3rd, the day that the council president was sworn in. And also section 102 of the charter says a clerk of council shall be appointed.
So, excuse me, Ms. Hemmings, you got to the point, and the point is, you just point out there is no clerk of council. You made that statement, and the code, the charter requires the clerk of council to certify the petitions,
Right.
and then to notify the recall targets of their sufficiency, and then at that point, ask the board to bring them back. So if there is no clerk, what authority do we have to accept those petitions and place this on the ballot?
What I'm saying is, I have this moment. I have the original petitions here, and you have, of course, copies of them, which was accepted by the director. We stayed here for several days certifying the signatures. And so what we're asking is that the will of the people not be thwarted because of the contrariness and the obstruction of the council president to avoid the effectuation of the charter.
So in other words, your position is that they haven't appointed a clerk, because if they did, then that clerk would be down here asking for the recall, or certifying and asking us to set on the ballot,
And
correct?
I'm just really.
I'm asking you that, right?
Yes.
So isn't your remedy going to, I believe it would be a mandamus, Mark, or, what would the remedy be to get the clerk, president of council to appoint a clerk? Let me just hear from Mr. Musk.
Since they have the duty to appoint the clerk, it would be an order from the court for them to fulfill their duty, which would be a
Mandamus action, and that could be brought by any interested
I
party,
think a petitioner,
a petitioner or somebody. Okay, go ahead, Ms. Hemmings.
Well, I think that as an agency that has a mission to effectuate the will of the people in terms of sending us to a judge at this point, after we already have had the petitions accepted for certification, is a little bit belated, because if that had been communicated to us from the get-go, then we would have done that. But instead, we have lost valuable time and a lot of effort by the residents and citizens of the city of East Cleveland, which took on 3 or a month ago, 3 or 4 weeks ago.
But may I interrupt you 1 second? I mean, I grew up in East Cleveland and still have family in East Cleveland. My concern here is, you know, everybody comes to this board and expects us to have jurisdiction over the activities of the municipality. You guys have to figure out, you know, I mean, it's incumbent upon you guys to know what your charter and your codified ordinances say. Not for us to be, you know, come to us later and say, well, we have to assume that you have followed your own charter and your own codified ordinances. So when someone comes to us and that we have to find out in the paper half the time that you haven't followed your own procedure, I'm really concerned. I mean, I don't want to ever thwart the will of the voters, but the voters need to be relying on you guys to follow your own charter. It seems to me you can't stand there and say that the position of clerk is ministerial. The acts of the clerk might be ministerial, but the actual position, your own documents, your own organizing documents say have to be appointed by president and council. I don't understand. I appreciate your advocacy, but I think we even got a different opinion from you in a prior case where you said that it didn't have to be a clerk. What was maybe Mark can enlighten us. We got an opinion on this. And I'm just frustrated. I mean, all these people sitting here, I respect every single voter that's here. I know there may be different opinions on what position they're taking about this. But everybody comes and expects the Board of Elections to fix what is the problem in the municipal, not only East Cleveland, other people come here and they're like, you must not thwart the will of the people. And my response is, you must follow your own documents. This doesn't make any sense. So that's my concern, that you guys have not followed your own charter and your codified ordinances in terms of appointing a clerk. And you guys know if there's a clerk or not. How are we supposed to know who's the clerk and who's not? You have a duty, and file a mandamus action and compel the appointment of the clerk. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Okay, at this point, knowing that the clerk, the president of council willfully, intentionally, and maliciously did not appoint a clerk in order to avoid that, at this point, my position, the city's position is that you're being, by not accepting, well, you already accepted the petitions. My certification was accepted.
Well, I could make the argument that that you brought them here knowing that there was no clerk. I don't want to get into malicious and intent and all that. I'm not casting aspersions on anybody, and I don't want to besmirch anybody's reputation or integrity. But just as you're saying, they knowingly didn't do this, that. You knowingly brought petitions here.
And you're knowingly complicit in her unlawful activity.
How are we?
Okay, Ms. Hammonds,
Ms.
Sticken, go ahead.
Okay.
When was the clerk terminated?
The clerk was terminated January 3rd.
Okay, having my past life as a council president, I know sometimes it does take time to find a clerk. I don't know if there's a process in place or not, so it's a little over a month here we're talking. So I don't know where we're at with that process.
Well, she also fired the deputy clerk, and then when I began
but
in the position of a clerk, let me finish. When I began acting in the position of the clerk, then she fired me. Then she fired the assistant.
Wait a minute. You just said you weren't here as the clerk though, when you began your comments, and now you're saying you are.
Okay, so she tried to fire everyone who was processing these certifications. So therefore, by your acceptance of these certifications, because we.
Well, actually, Ms. Hammonds, I wasn't done with my questions. You're going off, you're not letting me ask them.
Oh,
sorry.
Okay.
One, you began by saying you were not the clerk, and then you confused me because you said you were fired as the clerk, so I was confused by that.
Fired as the law director.
Okay, but that is within the powers of the president of council, from what I saw with respect to terminating the clerk. That does appear And that is part of this process. This council president started in January. I guess this is sort of a tighter timeframe is what I'm talking about. This hasn't been 6 months. It's been a little over a month. So I guess I'm curious as to that process to fill this role. The second thing is, it's my understanding when people bring petitions here, a lot of times we look for the signature verifications and those kind of things. And a lot of these issues which we're discussing do occur after the petitions have been accepted, because that's when these issues are raised to us. So to say you accepted these petitions, therefore you're bound by them, has never been the case, because some of these legal issues are things that we do need to discuss here.
Ms. Simmons, let me just make that point very clear to Ms. Sticken made. If your argument is by accepting the petitions, you have to put it on the ballot, that's not correct, because then we're making a decision prior to even having a discussion. That's why it's a discussion now. We've got them submitted to us.
Yes.
Now we're deciding whether or not we have the authority to place this on the ballot. As simply as that. Just by filing them doesn't say, you're going to put it on the ballot. Okay.
Okay.
So you understand that?
Yes,
Right.
President Hastings, may I back up a
Please.
moment with your comments? The certification, another case was brought to my attention, a previous case. This case has been litigated up to Kazoo. So it was said that the certification should be done by the position. You're relying on a person, and we're relying on the Thompson case as well as the Stevenson case, in which the ministerial duties of a clerk of council is not dependent upon any particular person. Further, and let me conclude by saying, by your acceptance of the certification, you had me, the board, the representative of the board, had me certify these positions. So at this point, really, it's not a mandamus action. This between me and you, and I'm seeking a declaratory judgment.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, thank you. Mr. Coleman, I'm gonna, there's some people that want to comment on this. You can have 3 minutes if you'd like to, Mr. Coleman. We do have some paperwork you submitted to us.
Today.
Yeah.
I'm not, I want to hear both sides, but go ahead, Mr. Coleman. We've got your paperwork.
I missed this.
This isn't, ladies and gentlemen, this isn't public comment period. Okay, that's the 5 minutes. This is not a protest hearing either. It's simply a discussion among board members and with the benefit of your input. So I'm going to limit it to 3 minutes at this point. Okay. But Mr. Coleman, please, we do have your paperwork that you submitted to us previously. Be heard, sir. Could you please state your name and address?
Okay. Good morning, Lee Coleman, 1615 Forest Hills Boulevard, East Cleveland, Ohio.
Please, be heard.
Okay, so we've had constant infighting between the mayor and the administration in the city of East Cleveland. After the last recall election of the mayor, we thought that the issue had been resolved, and both the administrator and our city council was going to work together. Nothing could have been further from the truth. There's been constant fighting between the council has refused to pay vendors, refused to approve union contract and complete the necessary approval so our city could continue to receive county, state, and federal funding, some of which is in jeopardy right now as we speak. As the residents, we had enough. We decided on December 21st to make a change. On that day, 3 residents completed notarized statements and affidavits and requested recall petitions on Councilwomen Gowdy, Stevenson, and Blahoviak. Then obstruction ensued. On December 27th, Councilwoman Corrine Stevens went into the council offices after hours and unplugged the computers and the cameras. As a result, Ms. Peters couldn't work. Our council clerk at the time could not prepare any agendas or any other council items for the for the January 3rd meeting. On December 29th, Councilor Stevenson penned a termination letter, signed it as president of council, and dated it for 12/29/22, terminating the employment of Ms. Peters, and Ms. Odidra Peters received that curry letter at noon on January 3rd. Discharging her as clerk of court for the city of East Cleveland. You've had those exhibits from. On December 30th, then Council President Nathaniel Martin appointed Mark McLean as interim counselor for Ward 3 as prescribed by the city charter. On January 3rd, during the council meeting that night, Corrine Stevens was elected president of city council. After the meeting, she fired the deputy clerk and deputy clerk, Ms. Parker. On the 4th, Nathaniel Martin appointed the law director, Willie Hemmings, as clerk pro tem in the absence of a clerk, so the recall petition could be submitted. On the 17th of January, at the next council meeting, the council attempted to unseat Councilor Nathaniel Martin in retaliation for his appointment of Ms. Hemmings as the clerk. On the 20th of January, after working through the holidays, rain, sleet, and snow, the residents turned in 1,500 signatures to the acting clerk, Ms. Willie Hemmings. Nobody else was available for us to turn them into. January 30th, January 30th, the council attempted to vacate the law director, Ms. Hemmings, and the assistant law director in retaliation for the law director's filing and certifying those petitions. All this for us as the residents here from East Cleveland, this represents a pattern of obstruction. It's continued up until this day. And all the exhibits in the timeline that we share with you show a deliberate and continued attempt to undermine that process and outlined in the East Cleveland City Charter. Now Councilors Bahoviak, Gowdy, and Stevenson are asking this Board of Elections to do that which they cannot do by obstruction. They're asking you to silence the people's voice and yet again throw out the recall petition that were duly sworn, legally circulated, and signed in good faith by the East Cleveland residents.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman.
Just a quick question on the timeline, because on the written document, I don't see the January 17th entry that you referenced. What was the January 7th? You mentioned something.
On January 17th, I think that was a rehab council meetings on the 1st and the 3rd Tuesday of the month. At that.
Well, what happened? In your narrative, you said certain things happened on January.
In retaliation for Councilor Nathaniel Martin making Ms. Hemmings the clerk pro tem, they attempted to remove him from council.
Thank you, Mr. Coleman. Mr. Anderson.
We're just asking that you get him on the week.
We understand that your position, you would like us to set a date.
Yes.
Right.
Thank you.
Mr. Anderson. Okay, you have 3 minutes, sir. Go on. State your name and your address.
Justin Anderson, 1865 Roslyn Avenue, East Cleveland, Ohio, 44112. Good morning, board members. Good morning, board members, and congratulations on your retirement.
Thank you.
Your retirement. I've been in front of you quite a few times. Sometimes you ruled in the favor of what I was coming for. Sometimes you didn't, but I've always respected your opinion.
Thank you.
Never doubted it, actually. So I'll be brief. I'll talk about a few things, and I'm not going to get too much into personal feelings about the council members and things like that. I just want to focus on like the what's her name, Ms. Campbell.
Chappelle.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Like she stated, we have to look at the laws and ordinances of the charter of East Cleveland, not what we feel like doing. So section 49 and 50, that's where it talks about you must have a council clerk to do this process. And it mentions the council clerk at least 10, 15 times. It doesn't say law director, it doesn't say volunteer, it says council clerk. It doesn't say clerk pro tem or whatever she tried to reference. So that's a big issue that she inserted herself as the clerk. I mean, 1 minute she's the clerk, 1 minute she's the law director, 1 minute she's a contractor, 1 minute she's representing someone privately. So we got an ethical issue we need to handle within the East Cleveland government, with Ms. Hemmings. And once again, it sounds like she's going to be suing, trying to sue the Board of Elections. And she's already done it a few times, and she's lost. Every time that she tried, she's lost. And because of the brilliant attorneys here, I'm sure she'll lose again. But anyway, let's see. Chapter 113, Rule 8 of the Charter, just for the record, for you all to know this, it says that the law director cannot give out any legal opinions unless she gets 3/5 of the council to vote. So when she sends her legal opinions to you, it's in violation of the city charter. I cite laws. I don't just get up here and talk about all that gibberish. But 113, chapter 113, rule 8 of the charter, it says she cannot give out legal opinions. So when she bombards you with these legal opinions, I hope that someone can reference the charter to her that she's violating. Also, the final thing I'll say, when it comes to people not getting paid, contractors and all that stuff, like she said before, that stuff needs to be handled within East Cleveland government. And I find it interesting that a contractor feel, oh, I'm not getting paid, so let me go get recall petitions. There's also revised codes dealing with retaliation amongst elected officials. Because you're not getting paid, you want to gather recall petitions. Doesn't make any sense. So thank you, board, for allowing me the opportunity to speak, and you have a nice day.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
I have a
Yes.
question. Do we have the document, the purported document where Ms. Hemmons was appointed? I haven't seen, I didn't see that unless I overlooked it. Do we have the document that Ms. Hemmons referenced and then someone else referenced? Presumably the action from the 17th. Did I miss that?
That's an affidavit she
Well,
provided.
there's an affidavit, but we don't have.
And here's
There
I
was
think an opinion she issued.
I saw her
And it
opinion.
technically is the only opinion we received from.
there was something else.
Yeah, I
in
see.
the attachment in the email.
And
No, I see that. Yeah, I saw this stuff, but okay.
Thank you, Ms. Wojciak. Thank you, Brett.
I know what she's saying.
Please, you have 3 minutes. Please state your name and your address.
Patricia Bohoviac, Counselor, Water to East Cleveland, 1894 Farmington Road, East Cleveland, 44112. There's so many problems with this presentation by the so-called law director that it's hard to decide where to start. One place is with the letters that she sent us saying that there were recall petitions, identifying me as the counselor for Ward 2, Counselor Gowdy at Ward 4, and Counselor Stevenson at large. All of those letters were in error. Willa Hemmons was never the law director of East Cleveland. According to our charter, the law director must be appointed by the mayor and approved by council. She was never brought before council, so she was never the law director. Her salary was zeroed out in the unanimous vote of the council in January. Her position was deemed vacant by council. That was a 4 out of 4 vote. There was one person absent. Still, the mayor's office allows her to act as if she were law director. That's the mayor and the police. She still runs the law department. I requested copies of the petitions from the city, and they refused. Basically, they said that I requested that they be sent by email. They sent me a response saying that I needed to pay to come and get paper copies. I did get email copies from the Board of Elections, which has always been very cooperative. However, they were not fully legible. So here we go back to the competence of the so-called law director. For one thing, as Mr. Anderson stated, she is to treat all her opinions as confidential unless there's a vote of 3/5 or more of council. Therefore, she should not be sending you opinions at all because there's never been approval of that by council. Another issue, of course, is that she was supposedly appointed as clerk of council by Councilor Martin. Councilor Martin is not a majority of council. Each petition is a separate petition. When you approve putting a recall on the ballot, you do not approve putting all 3 of us on. You approve one person if the petitions are acceptable. If the next set of petitions are acceptable, you approve the next one, and then you approve the next one. So in each case, one person is not the appropriate decision maker for appointing anybody or anything.
Thank you, Ms. Wojciak, for your comments.
and get through the rest of them.
We're gonna have to run a meeting here, so we know where you stand. I guess you're opposed to setting a date, correct?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Stevenson. Please state your name and address.
My name
Good
is
morning.
Corrine Stevenson. I reside at 15006 Grandview Terrace Road in East Cleveland, Ohio, 44112. I'm here today because of what is going on in the city, pretty much, that has been brought here. And I don't think this is the place for it. The charter of the city of East Cleveland addresses almost any and everything that you could ever wish for, want for, or need. If you review that charter, you would know that. Willa Hemmons stood up here and said that she's the law director. Willa Hemmons is fired. Willa Hemmons has been fired. The clerk of council was fired. The assistant clerk of council was fired. There were cameras planted in the council office. Illegal wiretapping was going on. So the majority of these people are going to be removed. You don't have the right to do the things that are being done. We need to follow the charter, ladies and gentlemen. That's why our forefathers wrote it. And they didn't write it so that the city would be bankrupt. They wrote it so that the city would forever flourish. If you read the charter, you would know that. I am embarrassed to continue to come down here before you guys with this nonsense. And I appreciate what you do every time you come. And I just want to thank you for what you do. But what is going on is illegal. And we have to fight through the illegalities of it to get to the end. And that is what we intend to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Jones. Please state your name and address and please be heard.
Yes. Good morning,
Morning.
council and audience. I am an East Cleveland resident originating from Cleveland, Ohio. I came to East Cleveland in 2005. I am totally embarrassed. And the last meeting, and I just recently started going, shame on me. But this council needs help at every turn, And I have no legal background, but every turn that something or an idea is attempted to move forward, this council obstructs it at every corner. All I can say is if there's any way that you all can intervene, guide, consult, or help, please look into what is going on. If you just look at some of the videos, unprofessional handling, Robert's Rule of Order, they don't even know what it is. So I'm really, please help us navigate this. Three, and I hate to say it, women are banding together to get in the way of any advancement of our community. I think it's sad to the point that I had to bring popcorn for the circus at our last meeting. Because that's what it is, it's a circus. I don't know why, I don't know what the political motivations are, but it is crazy. That's all I have to say, it's crazy. So I'm asking you all, please, do what you can. I know that someone said that we are expecting you to intervene. We're just asking for your help. We're just asking for your guidance. This is pretty sad. And I ask you to look at some of the videos of how these women are handling me. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Mr.
For one second, just if I may, Mr. Chair, I just want to make sure, thank you for your comments, appreciate them. I understand that there's a lot going on in East Cleveland. I just want to get clarification. Our decision and our analysis here today is really focused on one issue. And that's whether there was and please correct me if I'm wrong, whether there was a clerk who could assemble, a clerk duly appointed pursuant to the governing of legislation of East Cleveland that could assemble, certify, and deliver the petitions to us at the time that they were delivered. Is that the sole issue that we are looking at?
That's how I understand the question being presented. The charter requires the clerk to certify that the targets of the recall failed to resign after certifying the petitions. And the question for the board is whether to accept Ms. Hammond's certification of that fact.
Right. So to me, the facts and people want to come up, and I understand they want to vet and understand and tell us about all the ongoings and the differences of opinion at council and East Cleveland. But we need to seem to me to be informed for this discussion and to figure out how we are to act, whether to put them on the ballot or not. We need to know, was there a clerk?
Yes.
Or was there not a clerk? Duly appointed, but I'm just trying to have the comments. We have limited time to hear from people. If the comments could focus on those issues, it seems to me that would just be more helpful to us to understand what our role is here today.
And also how one council member can appoint the clerk. That's my other question in my mind. This is like one member did.
That seems to be the authority that Ms. Hemmings is claiming to act as the clerk, is the appointment of a single council person.
One person.
Council president.
Right.
So we're going to continue to hear from you, but that Ms. Chappelle is correct. That's the focus of this, is whether there's a clerk validly appointed at council. I speak for myself and not for the other board members. I don't care and take no position on whether someone should be recalled or not. I mean, that isn't any concern of mine. I'm sure my board members, whether we have the legal authority to make that, whether the clerk was actually appointed.
Right. Whether the conditions precedent for placement on the recall has occurred.
Has occurred. Condition precedent, right? It's as simple as that. And to your point, I'm not interested in knowing that meetings are conducted appropriately, allegedly, or this and that. But anyways, we'll continue on with the 3 minutes of comment. Mr. Fambro, if you'd like to speak, sir. Please state your name and address, sir.
Board. My name is William Fambro. I'm an East Cleveland resident. I have been for about 16 years now.
Great.
Okay. I heard that Will Hemmings was appointed to some kind of managerial clerk of council. Our charter does not allow for a position that is paid in salary called ministerial or whatever clerk of council. That is not a position in East Cleveland. The person who is claiming to be a law director, Willa Hemmings, actually has a contract where she is the attorney of the mayor, period. She puts legislation into form so that the council can vote on it. Other than that, she is simply the mayor's lawyer. That's what she is. And she parades around being called law director when that's convenient. Other than that, she's just the lawyer of the mayor. And I can prove that. I was in a court case where a city magistrate at the Court of Common Pleas took her and removed her from representing the mayor, the police chief, who is now indicted, and Michael Smith. The question was she the law director? And that magistrate determined that she was not the law director of East Cleveland, that East Cleveland has no law director, and she was ordered to remove herself from the defendant's table to go to the back of the courtroom where the audience sits. So these are things that you need to know. So I thank you for your time, for listening.
Thank you, Mr. Fambro, for your time. Thank you. And Ms. J. Gatson, I'm not certain. Yeah, sure. Can we continue?
Yeah.
Okay. Ms. Shay Gatson, Jay, please. State your name and address, please.
Yes, hi, Chuck Addison, 1862 Farmington Road, East Cleveland, Ohio, 44112. Good morning, board. Thank you for your time. First, I would like to say that I think that this discussion is kind of veered off of its intended purpose, which is to discuss placing these counselors on the recall ballot, not discussing whether or not Willa Hemmons is legally the law director of East Cleveland. Second of all, I just wanted to give some clarification for Ms. Chappelle. So on December 30th, Nathaniel Martin, who was the then council president, so it was in his legal right to do, he appointed Mark McLean as the Ward 3 council person. When we talk about the charter and whether or not there was a clerk, fact. We pulled recall petitions with then council clerk Tracy Peters. Fact. After the council people who were being recalled were made aware of this, they fired the council clerk as well as the deputy clerk. Fact. Council President Nathaniel Martin, within his right as council president, then appointed Willa Hemmons as pro temp clerk because no one could find it. They could not fill the vacancy to submit the recall petitions. Fact. After Willa submitted the petitions, then it was a nonstop harassment and just smear campaign against her to prevent and obstruct the submission of the petitions to the Board of Elections. We, the residents, have followed the charter as prescribed in the charter. I believe you all have a copy of our city charter, and so you can read for yourself. Legally and lawfully, we circulated petitions, we submitted them, we followed the procedure to the letter. It was beyond our control that they kept firing law clerks. Fact, council president or now council president Corrine Stevens, she appointed Mansell Baker as the pro temp secretary, who is basically fulfilling all of the roles of a council clerk, including preparing minutes, preparing council agendas. So he could actually have submitted the petitions, but because he is not technically named the clerk, he does not have to. And so basically our city is being held hostage by technicality. And so I just ask the board to please keep in mind that this hearing is not about Willa Hemmons. This hearing is about the will of the people, the fact that we are trying to make a stand. We're trying to bring some type of consistency and stability to the city. And we just ask that you please respect our charter, respect our will, and rule in our favor. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Katz. Ms. Plumes, I can't, there's a name.
Actually, can I note for the record though, in the affidavit submitted by Nathaniel Martin, he does indicate that this appointment of Will Hemmons occurred when he was a council member, not as council president. So I just want to make sure the record's clear on that. It's his own affidavit, this is January 4th.
Well, there's a Barbara Clones. I can't read the last name just as ineligible. So Barbara filed. Okay, you on Carolyn Road? Okay, would you like to be heard? Okay, you have to come up here, please. Okay, please state your name and address.
Barbara J. Thomas, 1165 Carlton Road, East Cleveland, 44112. Good afternoon. Good afternoon, actually. I am up here as a former councilwoman for 17 years in the city of East Cleveland. I have lived in East Cleveland 50 plus years. Ward 2 was my ward that I represented. I'm a proud resident of East Cleveland. And it disturbs me that we have all this confusion. It should not be on a personal level. We're supposed to be up here determining whether or not these petitions, these individuals should be getting on the ballot. Next, East Cleveland, no one has said it, is a home rule city. They do their own governing. You appoint the officials to take care of the business in the city of East Cleveland. Apparently that is not being taken care of. I don't want to hear who did what, and who sneaked in here. This is not a personal issue. It is a public issue, a legal issue, which is up here to be determined by this board if these individuals will go on the ballot. Petitions were gathered. Legally, they were determined by the Board of Elections that they were in order. All the petition names on there were checked and validated by the Board of Elections. They were accepted. Basically, there is a charter, and I'm assuming that from what is being said out here, that this board has the charter. But in all of that being said, all the residents that's coming in here to deal and look and see what's happening should know their own charter. We are, as residents, have the opportunity to deal with our business when it's not being dealt according to the law in the charter. Apparently, that has been done by taking action and fulfilling petition. Bring them down here.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Nathaniel Martin. After Mr. Martin, we're going to hear from Ms. Galloway. I'm cutting off any further public comment. We'll have listen over 12 people speak on these
Thank you
matters.
for your patience. It's an honor to be here.
Please state your name and address.
My name is Nathaniel Martin, 1839 Bearsville Road, East Cleveland. Basically, it's a very basic situation here as far as I'm concerned. It's about the petitions. It's about these going on the ballot. Here's where it is. Because the charter says that the clerk has to take them down, and we have no clerk, then what do? Sit on them? Do nothing? Something has to be done. Someone has to bring them down. Someone, 1,500, over 1,500 stickers were signed. Someone had to bring them down. So we got out, the work was done, people got out here, the people signed these petitions. All they're asking is that they go on the ballot to make a decision on the 3 people involved, Rehoboth, Gowdy, and Stevenson. So the charter doesn't cover everything like any situation. But the issue is putting this on the ballot, and the people have spoken. I've spoken. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Thank you. Ms. Gowdy. This will be our last public presentation. Go ahead, Ms. Gowdy. Please state your name and address.
My name is Councilwoman Juanita Gowdy. My address is 1857 Gosman, East Cleveland, Ohio, 44112. I'm here today because of Willie Hemmings had decided to put me in a position where I didn't have no other choice but to come down here to clear my name. Willie Hemmings is a private law director of Brandon King and a former mayor, Gary Norton. She take personal side, she's biased, she don't work with the council, and she have not been appointed by the council at all. It take 3 votes to vote Willie Hemmings in if we wanted her to be the city law director. She carried the title to blow everybody's mind thinking that she is our law director, which she's not. I had experienced Willie Hemmings in action. I had a campaign as running for mayor. And when it was time for Willie Hemmings to demonstrate that she was the law director of East Cleveland, she couldn't do it. So the magistrate, as Bamber was saying, told her to take a seat in the back. She could not come in and represent nobody. She's been doing this for the longest, breaking the rules of the charter. Ever since East Cleveland had her as a contractor lawyer for the mayors, she's been breaking the charter. She broke the charter by allowing the mayor giving out $300 for signing petitions. The mayor is breaking the law too. He's got to come before council to pass out any money. $3,000, they bribing the city. They know that our city don't have money, so anybody will sign up for $300 and sign a petition. I had got phone calls on that. Many phone calls that they buy the election. That's what the mayor did for the mayor election, and he's doing it for this. He's giving people $300. Now Shay Gaddison.
Please be quiet in the audience.
Shay Gaddison is the one that forged her signature on a recall petition that trying to throw me up about it, and she ended up. Y'all ended up throwing the petition out, and I thank you for that. The charter said it takes 3 votes for the council to pass, and we passed it. We passed.
Thank you, Ms. Gowdy, for your comments.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, all right, please ask everybody to be quiet. Please be quiet. If you want to talk, go out in the hallway, you can go out of the building, please. We have a matter to be considered here. Mr. Musson is our legal counsel. Mr. Musson, you have taken a look at this at our request, the board's request, correct? And we as a board have an independent duty to get, while we can talk to law directors of cities, we can still talk to our own legal counsel, correct?
Yes, Your Honor. Yes, Chairman.
And we've done that. So you've taken a look at this. What's your guidance to this board?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So there's 3 petitions up for review, and under the revised code, the board has the authority to review petitions. The charter requires the clerk of council to issue, verify the signatures, and certify the sufficiency of the petitions. Ms. Hemmings has certified those petitions and has fulfilled those duties, claiming the authority of the clerk. Under the charter, though, the clerk is appointed by council. Under the codified ordinances, the president of council has the authority to appoint the clerk. Ms. Hemmings claims that she was appointed clerk by Mr. Martin, who was not the council president at the time of the appointment. There's no authority under the charter for one single council person other than the president of council of the ordinances to appoint a clerk of council. So the conditions precedent on placing the question on the ballot does not seem to have occurred. And this board would need that condition to be fulfilled to move forward in the election.
That condition precedent being a duly appointed clerk.
Correct.
And there is it fair to say that there was no other authority when you've taken a look at that charter effectuating a further delegation to the appointing authority or provisions of others to act as clerk? In other words, Mr. Martin was here and saying, we don't have any clerk. You need to do this for us because we sign these petitions.
Right.
But that's correct. There is no other way other than this mandamus actually talked about, right?
Correct. The council has the duty to appoint the clerk. Right. And even in the pro tem, there is the authority to appoint an employee of the legislature to serve as the pro tem clerk, but that's the council as a body, not a single member.
But there is a remedy, which would be filing a mandamus action against the president of council to appoint a clerk. And then a judge would rule whether they have to do that or not.
Correct. The charter says that the council shall appoint a clerk, right? And there's a duty to do that.
All right, I'm going to just make a motion. I know there are going to be more questions or discussion on this, but I will move not to certify, set a date. I will move not to set a date for these recall petitions in East Cleveland. for some of the reasons we discussed here, if there's a second.
No second.
Okay, now there are other questions from our board members here in regards to this matter.
Yeah, I'm hearing that people say, I just want to make sure, I think board member Sticken had pointed out that Mr. Martin's comments were very passionate, the people have spoken, but people also speak through council. They speak by voting for and electing their representatives. And so we would expect, as a board, at least I would expect council as the spokespeople for the people and residents of East Cleveland to take the action they need to take as well. So I just, Mr. Martin, to Lisa Sticken's point, he doesn't indicate that he's the counselor at large, and I think the point was he's just one council member. I don't think that your affidavit, David, where you admit that you were, nothing in here says you were the council president. And it just seems to me the condition precedent has not been satisfied, that the authority for the clerk, there was no clerk and there was no appropriate appointing authority. I'm not persuaded by Ms. Hammond's argument, since she was the appointed authority. I don't think that you had the authority, Mr. Martin, to make that appointment. And for that reason, I'll have to support the motion. At some point, we need folks to follow the charter and be deliberate in doing that. And if we have, by whatever action we take here, don't give you the remedy that you feel you need, you have other recourse to pursue that.
Thank you, Ms. Chappelle. Any other question or comment from the board members? Okay, hearing none, all those in favor of the motion, aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign, motion passes unanimously. Thank you, this matter is concluded here. And I'll give you, and I know some people may be leaving in that regard. I know that we put an agenda item on here for Ms. Wojciak regarding petitions, but that matter is moot in light of this board's decision that we're not to schedule a hearing. So I'm going to just remove that from the agenda item. We have the approval of a personnel agenda. Does staff want to go into executive session to discuss this, or is there a need to?
Not the personnel agenda.
No, another matter.
Yeah.
Right. Hearing that, I will move to approve the personnel agenda as set forth in the agenda, recommending the appointment of Mr. Grajewski to the Outreach Department and Vicki Reset to our fiscal office, the promotion of Sherry Robinson as an election official, the retirement of myself, and I will not abstain from that vote. And the resignation of Mr. Adams. So if there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. Any question or comment? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. You have some updates, Mr. Bellotti, for us. Why don't we just wait one moment?
Sure.
It's unfortunate.
Very good.
We should still be another halfway through. There is some.
Yeah, just
She holds herself out, right?
Well, maybe
Their
not.
term is.
Yeah.
This gets. Get your attention, Jeff.
Okay, we're gonna come back into session here. Mr. Pilati, we got new business to take care of?
Just, yeah, 2 items of new business that wanted to hit on. And the first is new voting equipment. I just wanted to give a quick update where we are on voting equipment. The parties have come to an executable agreement. A lot of good work with Mark and attorneys from Calpe working on that. So that document actually has been sent over to county council, who has the authority to make the purchase. It will be introduced tomorrow at county council's meeting. The following week, most likely I will have to go and do a presentation in committee. And then the following week, which would be the 28th of February, is when council should hopefully be able to approve that contract.
Just a quick question
Sure.
for you, and I just want to thank Mark and actually all the legal team for the work that they did, and the summary about the negotiated improvements to the contract. Will the county council be privy to the improvements, that the additional protections that you've summarized nicely here? I know they're going to get the contract and it'll come before them tomorrow, but will they be informed about and maybe you've already done that.
I have not, and
I mean, I think it'd be important for them to, in deciding on a contract, to know that significant time and effort and wonderful, protections were negotiated and included in the contract. So will somebody be able to give them that update so they can not pause when they vote on approving that contract?
we discussed possibly Dan from Calpe attending, McMullen, thank you, attending to answer any direct questions. And maybe it would help if the board waived any privilege related issues concerning the contract negotiations.
Well, I don't know that we need to do that, but you enumerated, just even Tony could talk about, the improvements. I don't know that we need to waive the contract will be something they're looking at. It will be a public document. I don't think we have to waive a privilege for them for you to talk about the additional warranties and reps that we've required, the perpetual software that's not, that's now irrevocable, the shortened response times, and all of these things that you've outlined here. There's like 17 of these things just under. I mean, I don't think you have to waive the privilege just to talk about the contract improvement. I mean, that's just my opinion.
I agree with you. That it's an excellent summary, Mark. I know a lot of work's been taking place from our staff negotiating this. And we need to let them know. And ideally, I'd like to get that summary to those members before you see them so they can read on it and say, boy, make your job a lot easier.
Right.
And I don't know, the question becomes, is that a document that we need to waive a privilege on?
It's not really legal advice. I threw the confidentiality on there just to throw it on there with it.
I would share it with them. It's a summary, right? And
it's more of a memo.
And I definitely, you'll see to it that it gets to them before, because it's wonderful.
It really
We've done
is.
A lot of time.
I saw some typos.
Okay.
And even if you don't put your name, if it's not even in this form, just a summary that doesn't have, that it's from you or so that they can have, and it just seems it's great work to be done and be lost if and I start asking the questions, what's new in the contract? I mean, they have the information right there.
Right. And maybe we could just put it on Tony's letterhead, kind of tailor it more from Tony's voice rather than mine.
And having Dan there is an excellent idea. Mark, I defer to you if you're there too.
We'll look at the budget.
Yeah, right.
But it's not necessary. You can give him his kudos. He did a great job.
You're right. You don't need, if it's going to cost money, you don't need him there. And you could be there, obviously, to answer it. But that's excellent suggestion, because I think make your job a lot easier come this week. So, anyways, go ahead, Tony.
And so what, as part of our talks with Clear Ballot, we discussed getting voting equipment here And Clear Ballot wants to get voting equipment here, and they're willing to take on that risk of having some equipment start to come before we have the actual signed document. So actually this Wednesday, we'll have our first semi of equipment that will show up at the Haley warehouse. There's about 180 pieces of equipment on a semi trailer. And we're supposed to have about 8 to 9 semis come over probably the next 3 weeks or so. So about 2 trucks per week.
But all that risk then shifts to us for, once it's free on board, delivered to us, then we are responsible for its safekeeping and making sure nothing happens to it.
Correct. So we will, so we'll have that. Actually, Tony is going to take more of a lead role, working with Ryan and Vic with ballot and election support on the logistics of the big puzzle that it is of shifting things here, there, moving things around, so we can fit everything in. And Peter will take more of a lead, working on with those departments regarding like the checklists and the records of and spreadsheets to ensure this truck says it has this, and this is what we checked off, and we have everything lined up. So because we are obviously conducting the election, so we want to have those additional resources to help take the lead, so we can not miss a step on May's election and do this other work that we need to do.
Will the timeline allow us to have the acceptance by May 31st? I see that May 31st was our deadline for being able to comfortably to accept the equipment and everything. And
I think we will definitely meet that timeline. And quite honestly, our goal, and I think this is obtainable, is to complete user acceptance testing prior to the May election.
Oh, okay.
So that's I think that's the goal. However, that there's about 4 weeks of time built in there that as life happens, I think we definitely, I would say, hopefully comfortably May 31st for sure. And then we'll be working with Midwest, not through our current ballot printing contract, which that contract deals with actually producing ballots for an election. At the next meeting, we will have that extended, but we're going to work with them to print the test ballots that are outside of an election that we will use for our user acceptance testing. So that is something where we will use the paper that Midwest said, or I'm sorry, that Clear Ballot says you need to use for an election, because as part of our acceptance testing is printing a test deck that we run through all this equipment to ensure that it's reading like it's supposed to. So at some point in time, we probably will see something come on a voucher list from Midwest for printing of a test deck for this process. This is outside the scope of what we do for ballot printing for an actual election. But everyone's excited and nervous at the same time to get this going. And it was about one day of good, we got the contract done, and then, oh man, the stuff's on its way. So, but I think we'll do everything we do for a Cuyahoga standard and ensure that it's done correct and accurate, comprehensively. There's no questions on voting equipment. Tony was just going to hit a little bit on PPE for 2023. These were some discussions that we ended up having last year for some rovers and other individuals who came forward. And so we've kind of set what our course is going to be for this upcoming year.
Yeah, just as a quick recap, in 2020, the Cuyahoga County, at the onset of the pandemic, the Cuyahoga County Board of Elections began hiring sanitation officials, 2 to 3 per voting location. We also began sending out a large supply of PPE materials, including face masks, gloves, sanitation, hand sanitizers, face masks, and cardboard sneeze guards. As the pandemic began to recess, we pulled back on some of the number of things that were necessary to send out as far as the number, but still sent all the supplies out there. We also decreased the number of sanitation officials from 2 or 3 to 1 per location. In May, the president has announced that he will be lifting the public health emergency declaration and will be eliminating that designation. The Cuyahoga County Board of Elections, we're going to go ahead and eliminate the position of the sanitation official and also sending out the sneeze guards. We want to treat all the locations equally and the same, but we will continue to send out PPE supplies such as face masks, gloves, and hand sanitizer, alcohol prep pads, an abundant number of pens where people can use an individual pen and take it with them if they want. But in order to do it equally, but measured according to what the current status of the pandemic is. So just wanted to give that update as well.
To add one piece to that too, what we'll be doing is we'll be reducing the space between the voting booths, actually at the polling locations. Instead of the 6-foot spacing of those booths, that will shrink. One of the things that we saw at some of the locations in November of 22, where it was very hit and miss. There was no lines in some places. There were lines. It seemed that number of voting booths was something that's directly related to that. So we will start to kind of infill some of those spaces that we had in between to be able to get our quantities up to where they were previously.
Thank you. Any other questions? If you could share that. I know, I thought David was here earlier. I think he may have left, but I know he emailed us on it. You could follow up with him. Just okay. And in regards to the new equipment coming in, spacing is, you have enough room over there at the warehouse? It's gonna be a little challenge.
It's going to be a little bit of challenge, but we've done, the way that we're going to make it work is a DS200, our current scanner, is kind of made up of 4 components that are all assembled together. So we will be disassembling some of those, what we won't be utilizing for maze election. So like, for example, the bottom where the ballots sit in the can, we know that we can stack those 4 high safely. And we know that the scanner, the computer piece inside, we can fit about 50 of them in a cardboard gateward box. So we're going to be doing all those different things. And then this way, the scanner part, which will always be behind double locks, we'll be able to do that. And we can move those here to this building and put them in the basement and maintain that security. Whereas we probably will have some of those cans go into the basement of Haley temporarily. And so we're in the process of renting an empty semi-trailer, which then we can go ahead and throw those in there, throw a padlock on it, because those don't need the double security measure. So
you've looked into it.
Yeah,
It's gonna be a challenge.
we're playing that. It's a board game that we will win. We are playing.
Any other new business, old business, any public comment? Nope. And I know there's been a request to go into executive session. I will make a motion to go into executive session for purposes of discussing discipline matters. Employee, if there's a second.
Second.
Thank you. A roll call vote, Ms. Stickett.
Yes.
Mr. McCaffrey.
Yes.
Hastings, yes. Ms. Chappelle.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to executive session. If not all you hear when I get out, I tell you, it's been a wonderful ride with you guys, okay? It's really been fun. And I appreciate our timelines crossing for the past 16 years, so. And Stephen, I want a transcript of those nice things they said about you. And Steve, you don't need to stay after this.
Okay.
Oh. Oh.
Yeah, you gotta have something to gavel onto. And they can rest on there.